What is happening, my beautiful friends and family, and everyone listening today, tomorrow, whenever you want to listen to this podcast? Thank you for listening to it. I'm not sure what platform, but thank you. I do appreciate it. I am trying to grow the podcast as much as possible, as big as possible. Um, this is just something that I do really, and this is like my hobby, my passion now. And this is episode 20, um, named My Attempt. And this is going to be the hardest podcast I will have to do. However, I feel I must share this story. The story is about a part of who I was and where I am now. But before I open up to everyone, I want to just make like a quick disclaimer. You have two options here. You can judge me for the actions I took on that night, or you can choose to understand my path in life and why I am who I am and what this podcast is really built from. I hope you can choose to understand where I came from. I'll do my best to try and explain my mindset throughout the night. But it was definitely the worst point in my life. And another disclaimer that I feel I have to say before: I don't blame anyone for my actions that night. I was in a state of belligerence and anger, and I had a ton of other issues going on. So anyone that remembers that night, please remember I do not have any issues with you, any animosity. We've all progressed. We've all moved on. Some slower than others. Me, that's fine. But I just want you to know that I have no animosity towards you or anyone that night. On April 4th, 2016, I was at my fifth therapist appointment offered at my university, Cal State Dominguez Hills. They offered free therapy. I think it was like 12 sessions you get. On that day, my therapist diagnosed me with severe manic depression, severe anxiety, and she suggested bipolar spectrum disorder. And being on the spectrum basically means that I have bipolar tendencies, but I don't really fit the full diagnosis for bipolar disorder. Bipolar disorder often occurs for long periods of time. Although my erratic behaviors would occur for a long period of time, my mindsets were so different and chaotic. But that day I remember walking away from the student health building with a bottle of Prozac and a look of complete confusion on my face. I always knew something was wrong with me, with the way I think and act, but I never faced it, man. I ran. That was my thing. I got into this crazy habit of never facing my issues and running from them. And I remember taking my Prozac pills and walking to the bar on campus, and I walked in and ordered my usual Stella Artois. And I must have had like 10 of those beers that night, man. And I skipped classes for the night. I didn't go to any of my classes, and I just went home drunk and fucking out of it, dude. I remember sitting at work the following day with the exact remembrance of my therapist speaking to me when she gave me the diagnosis. I could see like her mouth moving, and I could still picture her looking at me and talking to me, and me just confused and scared. I sat on those words for about 3 days until I decided to tell my wife. So now it's Friday, April 8th, 2016, and I decided, yeah, it's time to tell my wife. And I remember exactly where she was sitting and where I was standing when I told her that I was diagnosed with all these issues. We were distant apart, and I was standing. She was sitting on the chair, leaning on the dining room table in the corner right there, by the kitchen, between the couch and the dining room. And I had my arms crossed, completely closed off, and just scared. I didn't know what her reaction was gonna be, and we discussed it, and there was a lot of confusion. I mean, I didn't know what the hell was wrong with me, and no one knew shit, dude. You know, and unfortunately, she told me that as things progressed in that conversation, she told me that she wants to get a divorce. And that we should figure out how to split everything up. And you know, I can't speak for how she felt. She had her reasonings, and I don't blame her. I would have left when I first saw the smoke. I wouldn't have waited for the whole house to burn down. She waited for the whole house to burn down. It was not the best time, but she had her beliefs and reasonings, you know, and she stuck true to them. Um, Again, I do not blame her for leaving. I just hate the time it all came down, you know, synchronicity. Everything just happens all at once, and it's something that people who deal with mental health understand. That sometimes when I hear bad news one time, I get so scared because I think two more are going to come, two more different times, because they happen in threes for me. And I don't know if I'm just putting that out in the universe, but sometimes I just get super scared. And so in this time, when she told me she wants a divorce, I broke down. I didn't take it well. You know, I can't say that my ex-wife and I were in love anymore. I think for me, I lost sight of what comfort and love was. Meaning, I don't think I loved her towards the end of our relationship. I was just comfortable. I was raised in a nuclear household where I had my mom, my dad, they were together, still together. And I thought that's how, okay, you know, we have a daughter together, we're married now, we're 2 years in, we've been together 6 years, altogether 8 years. So, you know, I thought that's what you had to do no matter how unhappy you were. And I wasn't going to be the one to make that decision. She was the one that had to make that decision. And I remember feeling just so scared as to what the hell is going to happen with my kids. We had two daughters at the time. I mean, we have two daughters between us. My oldest daughter was 5 at the time. She told me she wanted a divorce, and my youngest daughter was 4 months. 4 months old. And she was done. Kelly packed up her shit. But before that, before she packed everything up, I remember the following day, the day after she had told me that she wants a divorce. I remember my daughter had a softball game the next day, and Kelly and I showed up separately. And the first thing I noticed was she was no longer wearing her wedding ring. And from that day on, she never wore it again. Uh, it killed me to see that, and I had no freaking clue on how to take it. I flipped out. I held my own there, but it killed me inside, man. Weeks of pure awkwardness consumed the home. We had a 4-month-old and a 5-year-old. Times were tough and times were tense. 3 weeks go by, she gets her shit, and she moves back to her parents' house. In the time that she moved back to her parents' house, I had loaded my car with everything I had and went to Turnbull Canyon in Whittier, California, and parked there and slept in my car for about 3 days. I couldn't face possibly coming home and seeing her physically taking things out of my home. And so I ran, you know, I hid. And those 3 weeks went by, and I was dreading the upcoming May 2nd. That was going to be our 2-year anniversary. Again, we were married 2 years, but we were together for 6 years before that, so altogether we were together 8 years. But I can't say the divorce was just out of the blue, and I was a perfect husband. I was a lousy husband. I'm a great fucking father, but I was a lousy husband. And we were just fighting constantly, and we were just not meant. We got 2 beautiful girls out of it, though. But anyway, excuse me. The weekend before May 2nd came, and I was at peak worst, And what I mean by that is I was drinking every single day. I was taking pain medication called Tramadol. That shit is fucking poison, dog. I remember the doctor couldn't prescribe me Norcos or any narcotics on a consistent basis. But Tramadol was not considered a narcotic at that time. So this doc was giving me no bullshit, man. I shit you not, 90 pills every 2 weeks. I was wolfing them down at 6 pills a day. Take 2 in the morning, take 2 in the afternoon, take 2 in the evening to make me feel alright. Goddamn, I love Sublime. But that was definitely my peak worst of what I was doing to my body. So I was drinking with these little white pills in my tummy and with this new Prozac, and that wasn't doing a goddamn thing, because at least I thought that, but I was drunk. I was drunk most of the time. So the weekend before May 2nd comes, right, and my wife tells me she's going out with her coworkers on that Saturday night. She said the kids will be with their Nino and Nina that happen to live up the street from me. They actually lived in the same apartment complex as my sister. My sister saved my life that night. She really did. So, I'm freaking pissed off that she's going out while I'm so depressed and suicidal and drunk and intoxicated that I was pissed that she was going with some coworker that I had suspicions on. Anyways, she went out, and I said, well, hell, I'm going to my second home, Draft Pick Sports Bar in motherfucking La Mirada, dog. I got there at about 6 p.m. on that Saturday. I wanted to make sure I got there early so I could drink alone and not talk to anyone and just hope my life gets better while drinking a shit ton of beer. And when you're taking pain pills, man, sometimes it's like you never get drunk. And then sometimes you can get super drunk off like 3 beers. Anyways, I kept drinking and watching videos of my daughter and my wife and drinking. And 1 a.m. rolls around. I was fucking drinking from 6 to 1. That's like a part-time shift, 7-hour shift, no lunch break. So I'm stumbling out of the bar. I call my wife about 20 freaking times in the parking lot. Text her horrible messages. I text her that I wanted to see my daughters before I go home. I have to go home. She was she was freaked the fuck out, man, and she never responded that night. So I began getting more and more and more upset and more mad and more belligerent and more chaotic. I describe it as like pure mania goes on in your head where it almost sounds like a drummer just that doesn't stop, and it's so loud that you can't even get your own thoughts across. And I'm sure I was coming down from booze too, and I was just angry. So I said, fuck it, man. I'm going to Nino and Nino's house, and I'm going to see my kids before I leave. I just wanted to give them one last kiss, man. I made my way from the bar to the apartment complex where my daughters were with their Nino and Nina. And again, this apartment complex had my sister Lisa living right across from Nino and Nina. And I finally made it to the front of the complex, and I called Nino like 15 times. He never answered. And I wanted to go in the gates, so I called my sister at 3 in the goddamn morning, drunk, crying, screaming that I wanted to see my daughters before I go home. I didn't want to live anymore. That's what I screamed at her. I didn't want to live anymore. She gathered herself together as best as she could at 3 in the goddamn morning. She immediately came out and attempted to like calm me down and get me back into the house. But when she found me, I was at the top of her street. So her street's like this, the apartment's right here. I'm acting wild in the street. You go up and there's main busy street right here. And I walked up to the main busy street, and it's 3 in the morning, so nobody's really there, but I'm just watching traffic go by. Just in a daze, dude. And I remember my sister walked me back to her apartment, and she wanted me to go inside and relax with her and like rest, but I couldn't. My mind was going crazy. I wanted to see my daughters, and my ex-wife had told me, she had finally texted me that they're not with Nino and Nina. They're with her mom. And she told me they were with Nino and Nina because she thought I was acting erratic. And she was right. Had I seen my daughters that night, I'm not sure where I'd be. So I'm at the apartment, and I'm telling my sister that I don't want to be here anymore. I want to go home. I'm tired of fighting this pain. This pain that you can't put a finger on. I remember talking to my sister, and she got me back, and I was in front of her apartment complex again, and I'm looking up to the street, and I'm in a daze, and she's talking to me, and I see what I think was like a black figure way in the distance. And I'll never forget seeing that, because I was so set on there was this place of home. That's what I called it that night. That was gonna erase all my pain and take all my pain away. And I won't be such a burden to all these people anymore. And my daughters can grow up with a better father figure in their life than me. And again, these are the mindset that this was the mindset that I was in. And I always would carry a knife on me. I'd always carry a knife on me. And the knife I decided to take with me that night was a big ass 8-inch knife, dude. And I'm not saying 8-inch total, dude. The blade was 8 inches, so the bastard opened up like 16 inches, dude. This thing was a fucking sword, dude. I don't know why I had it. It didn't even really fit in my pocket. And so I had this knife on me, and I'm facing my sister. So the apartment complex is right here. My sister, and then me, right? So I'm talking to my sister, and I'm facing her, and as I turn to my left from the busy street, I see the beast, man. The Ford Explorer, man. The Huda. I turned to my sister after I saw that cop, and I told her I'm sorry. I turned towards the cops. They started walking down out of the car. There was 2 of them walking down with their guns kind of ready from a distance, and I looked at Lisa and said I'm sorry. I went to reach back to grab my knife, and I went to take off towards the cops, and she grabbed it. So before I got my hand on it, she took it out of my pocket. She turned it. And I just turned to her, and I just cried. I wanted to just die that night. I thought if I would attack the cops wielding a knife, they'll put me down. That was my exit plan. But when my sister grabbed that knife, I walked backwards, screaming, telling the cops to fuck off. And the 2 officers, they kept their distance with their guns drawn, and my sister pleaded with them that I had no weapon and that I, everything that I was going through. And they dropped their guns when they saw I was obviously just messed up mentally. I told them that I wanted to go home, that I didn't want to live anymore. I told them that I can't do this. I'm screaming at these cops, I'm just screaming at these cops, man. And from that main street, my wife drives down the road with her coworker, and she was the one that called the cops that night, and she met with them around the corner from the apartment complex, and I blew up. When I saw her, I began walking over there, and my sister was upset too, and she starts talking and walking over there. It was nasty. It was a nasty scene, dude. The cops told my wife to just get the hell out of here. They backed up and they took off, and I'm blowing up, dude. I'm going off. I'm screaming, dude. I'm like, come on, like, let's go. I told the cops, like, I'm ready. And they were professionals, those 2 cops, and eventually they calmed me down a bit, and I told the cops that I wanted to talk to my dad. I just wanted to talk to my dad because I wanted to tell him I'm sorry. I'm sorry for disappointing him by not being strong enough to continue in life. I called my dad, 4 a.m, man. He answered. He was scared, dude. I told him that I'm going home now, and that I love him, and I'm sorry. And I hung up. This was like the worst time in my life, dude. Um, so I kept screaming at the cops, dude, and just yelling all my issues. I took my Pendleton off and I threw that bitch, dude. I wanted to fight the cops, you know. I kept saying, just come on, come on, come on. As time went on, like, two cruisers came up from the other side of the street, so they trapped me in the middle, and I was like, fuck it, dude, I'm running. So I took off running, and I got maybe like 50 feet, dude, before being tackled by this, like, gargantuan of a freaking cop, dude. This brother stood like well above a 6'2". I even said I almost got away and shit, and he smirked. They picked me up off the ground, man. They handcuffed me and walked me back to the car. And who do I see with my sister, my nephew, and my dad? And I just cried. I cried and cried and cried. I sat in the back seat of that cruiser just staring at them, and I felt like I was just at my all-time low. And the car ride, the police ride from Whittier to UCLA Medical, UCLA Psych, it was a trip, man. Uh, the cops threw me in the back of the car of like a rookie officer, and she was like some young lady, like she was a young woman, and so off we went, and we talked like the entire ride over. We talked so much that she got completely lost. No bullshit. I shit you not, it took us like almost 2.5 hours, almost 3 hours to get from Whittier to UCLA on a Saturday morning at like 6 in the morning, 5 in the morning. I don't remember the exact conversation we had, but I do remember that she hoped the best for me, and she said that I was very nice, and she said that she's seen many men in different states of mind, and she told me of a story of a man that had a wife and a nice home and was very, very successful, but fell very, very hard financially and attempted to kill himself. And she told me that she recently heard that he's back on his feet and doing much better, but she was kind, and she talked to me like a normal person the whole time. You know, she said she wished me very well, and she gave me a hug and took off the cuffs. I remember being walked in by the nurse and just getting an immediate smell of piss and shit as soon as I walked into the back of UCLA Psych. I sat in a chair like in a long hallway with the right side like just being a big, all these windows where you see doctors. It looks like they're like, it looks like In and Out and shit. And they're all in white too, so whatever. So I'm sitting on the chairs that are kind of along this side, and then on this side of the wall are like the real intense patients that, you know, they're screaming obscenities, they're fucking butt naked, they're doing things with their feces, and I was horrified, right? And we went through hours of intake and all these constant questions regarding my current mood, and they gave me a couple pills. I wish I could remember what they were, but they told me that they'll help me rest. And so I remember taking those pills and being told to sleep in a room. It was like fucking maybe 25 by 25, you know? But along all the walls were church pews. Old, hard ass church pews. And we were told to pick a pew and try to get some sleep. And Dude, there was like 15 dudes in there, and like the pews are kind of long, so it's like one guy in the middle, and then one guy. So you wanted the end ones, right? I got there really late in the night, I guess. So I'm right in the middle, dude. And I think everybody at least smelled or looked like they were transients. I was just scared shitless, man. I was horrified. Like my mind fought back to sleep that I so much needed, but and whatever that goddamn pill was doing. But I watched my pew partner stand up, dude, pull his wee wee out, and just pee all over the floor, right by my face. I was so out of it. I just got up and walked to the hall and sat in those chairs, and then opened my eyes and stared at intense, mentally ill patients. um, so I sat on those chairs until I fell asleep. One of the docs came out and he walked me back to the room with all the pews, and piss was cleaned up by that time. I knocked out in the pew, and when I woke up, it was 2 doctors and 2 paramedics, and they said, we're going to transport you to another facility in Culver City. And they helped me up off the pew. They cuffed me again. They put me on the gurney. They strapped me up. They said the cuffs were for my own safety. And, you know, I was calm. I understood they had to do what they had to do. And so they moved my ass to Culver City, and it was some real cushy ass, like, mental health clinic. I was with a psychiatrist and a therapist for about like 7 hours, dude, as I discussed my mindsets and my issues. They let me sit outside and smoke free stoves that they gave me, dude. They had some like leather recliners and a huge ass TV. The other patients were like super cool, asked me like about the football game and everything, and I was super anxious and scared when I was in that place. Real scared. Most of the patients were all transients from LA, dude. I did not want to be there, but I was on a 72-hour hold, 5150, man. So, you know, I thought I'd be there till Monday, and then I got a call, man. I got a call, and they said, you know what, we're going to be able to release you. We feel you're able to go back to society or whatnot. And I called my mom as soon as possible, and she answered, and I was just pumped, man. I looked and smelled like crap, but I was freaking happy, man. I waited at the door like a dog, dude. My mom, my dad, my sister Lisa, they came out to Culver City, which is not close to where we live, and once they got there, the security team finally released my property and told me to get the fuck out. I gladly left and never went back. Never. I remember the somber, intense car ride back to my parents' house. My sister, you know, she did her best to make light of the situation. My mom was scared. My dad was confused and scared, but I was in a horrible place mentally. The first thing my mom asked me was, are you hungry? I said, hell yeah. And I think we got like in and out, went back to my parents, and I don't even think I went inside the house when my friend JB, he picked me up because he texted me. I was texting him on the way back, if he can give me a ride to my apartment. So I jumped in his truck as soon as we got there, and he took me to my apartment. And I was scared as hell to go with him. I knew he was gonna set me straight, you know, much like an older brother would do for a younger brother. He said some tough shit. He cursed. but he only wanted me safe. I saw it in his eyes. I tried to give him some decency by letting him know where I was. Um, he kind of took care of me from that point on in life, in certain aspects. I'm not saying like he took complete care of me. No, he, we just watch out for each other, and we really grew into a real brotherhood between me and that man. And so he dropped me off, and I scurried to my apartment, man, and I slept. I slept for like 16 hours till like Sunday evening, and I reached out to my wife, and I asked if I could see the girls. She said no. She does not feel it's okay. She was scared. She said I could meet her at her parents' to talk to her outside, but that's it. I said okay, I'll meet her that night, and I attempted to explain what had happened, but honestly, all she could ever hear was like her own pain, man. Anything I was saying just was like this big at that point. And she was angry and afraid, and she was definitely just done with my bullshit, no matter how serious it got. She was done. And we never tried after that. Eventually, I accepted it, and I've grown up past it. I think something that helps me now is forgiveness. Whatever happened in the past, we've moved on. We work well as taking care of the girls in two different households, which is a challenge, but we do pretty well. And we understand that the girls are always in our mindset, so we've never hurt each other by using the girls in between or anything like that. But immediately after all this happened, and she's gone, she wants a divorce, we're going through with it, I didn't focus on my mental health. You believe that shit? I never went back to therapy, never took my meds, drinking, just being miserable. After the hospital, after the attempt, I didn't learn shit. But man, it took me about 3 years to really understand how traumatic and difficult a divorce can be. It could be bad. In those past 3 years, I drank and took other antidepressants irregularly. It was awful. And it wasn't until, I would say, up until my daughter was in the hospital last year, that I really began taking my mental health seriously. And I've been in therapy now for a year. I go every week. I'm very proud of my relationship with my therapist. I've moved so forward so much that it's pretty amazing. I don't drink anymore. I don't really care to. I'm not like a super water walker, but I just don't care to ever drink again. It's not for me. And especially on my medication. I've been on consistent medication for a year now without drinking, and it has been amazing. I finally found a medication that works. And for anyone that's deciding to go the medication route, the best thing I could tell you is be patient. Be patient. I finally found medication that works, and honestly, this is the 5th one. And most of the medications, they got that 4 to 6 week turnaround, so you don't feel shit for 4 to 6 weeks, or until 4 to 6 weeks, and then you'll know if you like it or not. And most of the side effects are so goddamn horrible. But I am able to reflect now on these past transgressions and these past really just distorted thoughts and feelings, and able to pick it apart in a way that's beneficial to me and my future. And really, I owe it to my therapist, my psychiatrist, um, my fiance, my family, my support team. Um, and really, I need to give myself a little respect because I've taken so many different changes, drastic changes in catching my first thought, thinking with positive intentions, being kind, being polite, being a gentleman, being respectful. And I'm excited. I'm excited for where I am now and who I am going to be in the future. Um, I know that I have a large responsibility in making sure my medication is followed properly. I'm in therapy. I'm constantly finding something positive for me to do, not drink, not just bury myself into some substance. Instead, I have the podcast. This is the most writing I've ever done. And episode 20, I really wanted to talk about this night, episode 20, because this is exactly why I'm starting the podcast. Is I want to be able to speak about my experiences through life and my struggles with any and all people. And I want to have people on that share the same ideas, maybe have not gone through it, but love somebody that is going through something with mental health. And I also want to just show different interests that I have. So there's not just this stigma that mental health is this person, this drag of a person, this emotionally volatile person. No, it's a person that also has interests, has all everyday life, um, have everyday experiences and encounters with people. I'm a middle class person, and I'm just trying to do the best I can. I've had a rough time in some aspect, but I'm doing the best I can, and by me reflecting on a story like this, it allows me to really open up and show what I've been through. And if anybody else is experiencing that or has been through that, you'll know what I'm talking about and those feelings that I had. But I really hope you enjoyed the podcast. This one was by far the hardest podcast I ever had to write. And obviously I got a little emotional too, but writing this 10 pages of notes right here is just, it was hard to reflect on. It was hard. It was hard to open up a lot of those feelings again and reflect on those moments. And some of those memories are quite vivid. So, but I hope somebody can take something away from this that can benefit them in some way or some form. I hope you really enjoyed the podcast. Peace.